fact today. So the first million cases took 90 days. And then as of, it was July 24th, the million cases just before that took 100 hours.
What?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that we still don't have a very clear consensus on what even causes this or what's a safe practice or not. We have ideas, but there's nothing really firm there yet. Sort of amazing.
It's funny, you asked last time the question, Jack, and it was one of those kind of impulse reactions about, now it's more about breathing, right? About wearing a mask and not so much about touch. Are you more worried about touch? And I thought about it since then, right? Every day you're thinking about this and you're like, you're so right. It's like, yes, I'm concerned a little bit about touching things and washing my hands. Nowhere near like 90 days or 120 days ago.
Yeah, have you had like interactions with people like that get much too close for your personal comfort?
Definitely. And we quit going to those places and stay away from those people. Why don't we all start with some introductions? So, of course, we got Jack Lee, who's the haiku master for Datassential. Thanks again for helping us with this series and being with us all this time. We've got John Frick, the Director of Menu Development for Eden Park Hospitality Group, who will talk to us about the breadth and depth of their company and how many different segments of the industry they're in, which is very interesting. Janet Armstrong is she's a Senior Technical Sales and Culinary Manager for Mars Foodservices US. And we also have Michael LaDuke, who's a VP Corporate Executive Chef for the Capital Grille, part of Darden. So looking forward to, to today. I think it's really interesting as we go on here. So this is our 8th webinar. So we've been doing it for 16 weeks since toward the end of April. And, our little conversation just in the last 10 minutes or so has been that things have changed quite a bit just in the last few weeks, because it was in a month ago, 2 months ago, it was a whole different scenario that we were working with the unknown. Now there's still unknown, but there's, some things that are known, but there's also total flexibility in what you still need to do and how you still need to react. And I think that's what we're going to talk about here more today. And also, talk about the supplier operator relationship, and in this case, sponsor member relationship. But what that means and where this is today, but most importantly, where's it going to be in the next 4 months, 6 months, and a year? So looking forward to all of that. Michael, why don't we start with you, so you can talk a little bit to us about, what's happening at the Capital Grille and Darden, and you even had some great, interesting information about your career along the way to get to there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as Kevin and I have now known each other slightly over 30 years, which makes us both pretty old. But yeah, I spent some time, about 17 years at Disney. And then through the absolute best timing in the world, I decided to go to casual dining the year before the Great Recession. It was a fantastic move, by the way. So I went from Disney to $1.35 plate cost, just like that. So it was great. And I spent 7 years at Red Lobster, great opportunity there, learned a lot of stuff there, had a lot of obviously interactions, a lot more interactions with our supplier partners there, given that style of service. And now I'm in Capital Grille in Darden. So I must say most people are probably familiar with Darden, but 8 brands going from Cheddar's, which is sort of our biggest value player with the $10, $11, $12 check average, Olive Garden, Longhorn, which everyone know, us, Eddie V's, Seasons 52, and Yard House and Bahama Breeze. So we're all over the board. Have been all over the board. So, for us, it was just, it was just this. We literally, is interesting. We were talking the other day. We literally had a local charity event the Thursday night before sort of the world ended and everything happened. And I remember we were talking about what this maybe could be. On Saturday, I got a text from some of our leadership that said this thing is deteriorating rapidly, being early Monday. And then on Monday we came in and things had stopped. So it just created a lot of unique opportunities for everyone. For us specifically, we're a dry aged beef house, so we and we own all our own inventory. So basically, we have to buy beef, let it wet age for 3 weeks, move it to distribution, then move it to our restaurants and dry age it for another 3 weeks. So you've got 6 to 7 weeks of meat on inventory. We have 58 restaurants. So we had, 6 $7 million worth of beef product that we were in various stages of drying and not knowing what we're going to do with all our restaurants closed. So, we just had to do some, like everyone else, some creative things, a lot of to-go. We had the idea early on to maybe try and sell steaks out the back door, a raw program, because, all of us, in Orlando, I'm sure like a lot of places, the grocery stores in the very beginning were just a wreck. Some of them weren't open. They were counting people. So we try and sell steaks at very minimal profit just to move them. And we ended up moving we may have written off a small amount or donated a small amount, but when I say small, very, very small. So we end up going through all that inventory over the last few months. We did not have to freeze any product or put any away or force or do anything. So we were fortunate. And we have really, really, like a lot of brands, really, really loyal guests. So when they got cut off cold turkey, they're like, hey, can I grab some Capital Grille steaks and put them in the refrigerator and have them? So that was it. I mean, I think the great thing for us, and I think all the companies that are going to survive or are thriving now is, and a common theme is it's all about the values of the company. So our company senior leadership went into this from the very beginning, obviously doing all the tactical things they have to do to financially keep a company our size afloat. When you're an $8 or $9 billion company, there's a lot of things it takes. But there's a lot of work with them about how much cash do we have to make, how much can we afford to lose. So there was a plan, but that plan was really sort of behind the scenes and sort of the structure, but the focus has been 100% on how do we keep people working, how long can we furlough people, when do we bring people back, how do we not affect people's lives? Because this changed, all of our lives, either whether it was financially, emotionally, physically. I mean, we're all just a little bit different than we were in March. So that was to have your, ultimate senior leadership, your CEO stand up or send notes out and say, hey, we're going to take care of the people in the restaurants, and we're going to, by extension, take care of our guests. We're going to take care of leaders, because the focus for us is our goal is to have the best possible product we can have when we come out of this and try and capitalize on all the best leaders, because unfortunately some folks are going to fall out. The worst part about all this is that, we all like to win, but no one likes to win at the expense of another brand. We all want to do more business, but I don't want to do more business because someone closed, because I love the industry, more than I love the particular brand that I work for. Right. So, I mean, unfortunately, there's going to be people not working. So we want to have the reputation of being the best place to work. So we just want to try and focus in on, having the best servers, having the best managers, best leaders, best chefs, all those things. So I think that was the big thing for us, was how do we focus on this, keep everyone working. I mean, we continue to pay people, people who thought they weren't going to, be able to, entry level people who maybe live on an operations bonus were able to still receive those type of things. So that was a cool thing. But, at the end of the day, the big thing for us is, and we're going to talk about a lot more, is that it's just the world is, this isn't a fad. The world is completely different than it was, 5 months ago now.
Yeah, that's awesome. It really is. And I love your personal attitude. And of course, your company, I mean, Darden's such a special company and always has been looked upon as one of the biggest leaders in our industry as far as culturally and the way you take care of your brands and especially staff. So John, why don't we go to you and talk a little bit about because the complexities there are quite different with the type of brands that you have, and you're more regional. So I think it's kind of interesting that there'll be a little difference in what we hear from you.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities for sure, but we are a pretty unique brand, and starting with our name. And as we talked a little bit yesterday, I do spend a lot of time explaining what the heck Eaton Park means. But I do work for Eaton Park Hospitality Group. Company was started in 1949 as Eaton Park Restaurants. And so small car hop service, mostly limited counter service. And the name comes from our two founders who, 1949, we're back from World War II. People were getting out on the road. You see a lot of eateries popping up, a lot of signage going out there that says park and eat. And so they said, hey, that would be cool. Let's call it Eaton Park for a different take on it as a restaurant. And I spend most of my life explaining that to folks now, so because it's just odd. But so we've been a family restaurant. We're a full service family restaurant chain. We have salad bars in all our locations. In the 90s, like 96, so we also diversified into some contract food service. And that's called Parkhurst Dining Services. Parkhurst does a lot of B&I accounts. We've got colleges, universities, all of those type of things. We feed the Steelers, a lot of different one-off things for them. So we've sort of in two divisions now. So I work in the restaurant division. It's Eden Park Restaurants. We have a fast casual concept called Hello Bistro. We have 10 of those. We have 2 white tablecloth or more upscale locations called The Porch. 2 locations here. One's in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, and one is right down in Shenley Park near Shenley Plaza, which is the heart of Oakland near Pitt campus. So we're a nice, beautiful facilities there. We similar to Michael, when this started to unroll, we said, we should start planning ahead for this, and then things really rolled fast. So did a lot of changes on the fly really quickly, scaled back the menu, and looking about, how do we preserve the business? How do we preserve our staff and our team members? Who's going to be doing what? We've never laid people off ever. So they were really cognizant of that and really careful and cautious about who we had to furlough and who we could keep and what we would be doing during that time. And we really didn't know where we'd be headed with that. Dining rooms all closed, takeout only. Fortunately, we had really laid a great groundwork for the takeout business. So we were able to execute that very quickly because, of course, this happened during the Lenten season, which in Pittsburgh, as Kevin knows, it's fried fish every Friday, buddy. You better be ready. So it was all hands on deck for quite a while there. And so, because of the great partnerships we've had in the community with United Way and some of those charities, some of the schools we found were their school food service programs that had given up. They couldn't deal with that, and they weren't able to feed these kids who, quite frankly, need that, and they relied on it on a regular basis. So we started slowly taking on some of that business. Some of our B&I accounts were doing meals for the city of Pittsburgh schools. Some of the larger accounts, they were doing 13,000 meals a week for kids. We were doing a large quantity of meals out of my test kitchen, and then about 5 or 6 other satellite restaurants that we had set up to get those things rolling as well. So it's an important thing to do. We're still doing that in a much smaller part now, but some of that funding is coming back on as we get ready to get into fall here, and still plenty of unknowns with schools. And so we're working on taking on some more of that business here in the next coming weeks. And K through 12 schools is not something it's really normally part of our business. So it was a little bit of a learning curve for us there too. But we had great people we got together, and
do the nutrition regulations still apply in this case for the K through 12 meals, or are they sort of off the table for now?
It's a little lax right now, and they're not as that was a big concern I have, because I said I don't have a lot of experience with that. Yeah. So I'm going to need some guidance on what we put together for that. They have backed off on that a little bit. It's more about making sure we're getting people fed before holding onto those. So, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, it's similar to Michael, and although not to the extreme of dry aged beef, my gosh, we have salad bars. So we had a lot of produce on hand. And that's one of the things that makes the rest of our menu variety really great, is we have access to all of that. So we shut salad bars off right away. We wound up with a lot of produce that, we had to move through pretty quickly as we're scaling back the menu. So a lot of donations to team members. And like I said, senior leadership really making sure that we were taking care of our team members. Free meals for those who were furloughed, a couple days a week in all our locations, and a lot of effort went into making those things happen.
In your college and university and even the B&I accounts, I know that there's no crystal ball right now, but what do you do? Do you have like alternate plans to say, what if these open in 2 weeks? What if they don't open in 2 weeks? How do you do this?
Well, there's fortunately on that side of the business, they have tremendous relationships with all of their clients, and they've had tons of conversations on, trying to jointly figure out what are we going to be doing, because we can't wait 2 weeks out and say, okay, we're going to be able to supply that or make that happen. Everybody has a different situation, which, some of them, the colleges have been told, okay, you're going to, you're not going to come into campus at all. Some of them you're going to be in campus, but you'll be stuck here. You're quarantined here, so we have to feed you the whole time. Some of them are quarantining them in hotels near the campuses. So it's a mixture. And so those B&I accounts, some of them are now taking on having to do delivery to set locations. So they're taking it to a dorm facility as a drop versus them coming in and collectively coming to a cafeteria style. So yeah, they're learning a lot on the fly as well. But
yeah, interesting.
and the challenges with some of the business accounts of, some businesses are feeling better, the people who are working remotely, and some of them say, well, we really can't wait to get them all back in the office because we'd like to have them be a little more productive. But in some cases, they're finding they're even more productive. So,
well, and Pennsylvania has been a very conservative state, I would say, right, with 25% of restaurant dining and others. Does that reflected in office buildings too, not opening up?
Yes, yeah, very much so. Even within our own corporate office here, a lot of folks are working remotely. It's hard to do a lot of test kitchen things out of my house, so I'm here all the time. But if you just walk through our office, there are people who are working on staggered shifts, and they only work certain days of the week, and it's interesting for sure. And 25% capacity in the dining rooms is, I know our local restaurant associations have really been pressing the government for some help with that, because it's hard, and it's takeout. Yes, takeout has grown dramatically, that's for sure, and takeout business has been great. But takeout with 50%, at least 50% capacity in dining rooms will be even better. So cool.
So Janet, we've had some great conversations with you about all the things that are happening in your world, being global too, which is really interesting with Mars. Why don't you give us a little rundown on, kind of you and, who you are, what you do for the company, and then a little bit about where you guys are and what your philosophy is here during this time and in the near future.
Yeah, sure. So Janet Armstrong is my name. I started with Mars Food. So I work directly for the food side of the business, our food service business. So the folks that would call on, the food service accounts, they work cross between food and confection. So those folks are selling Uncle Ben's rice and stuffing, as well as Snickers and M&Ms and things like that. So most of what I do is in the food sphere, and I started directly with our food business when we were headquartered in California. So Rancho Domingos is LA, California, and then about 3 years ago, our whole office up and moved to Chicago, which is where I am now. You can kind of see from my photo that that's not today, but so I was one of the handful of people that moved from Southern California to Chicago, and one of the even fewer folks that stayed for more than a year or so. I'm hanging in there, and I actually really love living in the city. It's pretty nice. So I started out as product development in working for R&D. And then I've shifted now, and I report to the sales organization. So I was doing sort of a little bit of both for a while, doing product development specifically just on food service products, as well as helping the team out in the field, going out with our customers. And what I do all full-time now is bring our products to life. So since the type of products that we're selling in the US are ingredient sort of products, not center of plate or standalone, if you will, although I will argue with you that rices and grains are definitely belong in the center of the plate. They're not standalone for sure. So yeah, I bring those products to life in recipes with our food service side, like creating solutions. How do you handle this in your specific back of house? Here are some menu ideations, like creative problem solving sort of stuff. And then on our retail side also, I'm going out and I'm cooking this product and for the buyer, at the Kroger, at Costco, at Walmart, that sort of thing, so that they can experience that as a full meal, because that's really critical, and I feel really strongly for. A meal is not a component. It's not one element of food, right? It's the whole experience. It's the walking into the restaurant. It's like seeing the plate presentation. It's everything that's going on. So it's important to, present the product in that way. So that's a lot of what I do. Our company, everybody knows of Mars from the confection side. More people in the food service know that we're also Uncle Ben's, but globally we have a huge footprint outside of food and confections as well. We have a big business in pet food, pet treats, pet care. We have veterinary hospitals, and we have veterinary labs. We have a symbioscience, kind of an emerging technologies. We have drinks. Well, actually, I take that back. We recently sold off drinks. So we have lots of different elements that we're dealing with around the world. So this whole COVID situation for our company has been massive to deal with, to say the least, with well over 100,000 associates literally all over the world. Even our brand like Uncle Ben's that you guys are familiar with exists in many markets and countries around the world. So one of the things that I feel really pretty proud of, the way that our company is handling this particular crisis, is in a lot of our business, we need people to go in, right, to work, right? We're factories, we're producing food that feeds the people. Like it's a critical job. If we're not producing food, people aren't going to eat, right? So we need to make sure that our people are safe and our factories are running really well, controlled environment. So one of the kind of backbones of the procedures that they're putting in is they want to make sure that when you come to work, is the safest place you're going to be. There's no safer place that you can be right now than going to work, even safer than people's homes in most cases. So I'm feeling really, really proud of that.
You brought up Uncle Ben's. Do we want to talk a little bit about
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure everybody has heard the announcement. So it was June 18th, our company made announcement for the intentions to rebrand and really evolve the brand of Uncle Ben's. So even well before all of what's been going on today, so really as long as I've been working for the brand, there's been some conversations regarding the brand and understanding that there's some sensitivities, right? So the decision was made to evolve this brand. So what was really important is the timing, right? So the timing now is right. These conversations have been going on for quite some time, and it became really clear that now is the time. We need to be part of the solution. We're a principles-based company, so privately held, family-owned, and family still on the board of directors, and we operate under 5 principles. So that's quality, efficiency, mutuality, responsibility, and freedom. And all of our decisions are really founded in these 5 principles. And then we ground ourselves in our purpose, which we feel that the work that we do today is actively creating the world that we want tomorrow. So it's that reason that we feel it's important. And as you can imagine, it's massive. Like, this is not just even the US or Canada, this is global rebranding. So not just the sheer dollar amount that's involved with it, but the complexity across all of the products and food service and retail. It's really massive. So it's an important thing to do. We recognize that although the brand image and the whole identity came out of the 1940s when the brand was launched, and it came from a place of pride and quality of the product, and we were quite proud of this tradition. And even today, the brand consumers still primarily associate the brand, both the name and the image, with quality and familiarity, something that everybody's mom cooked with when you were growing up, and you knew that was the best quality rice that you can buy. And the work that we do around families and cooking together, sharing meals, that sort of thing. But we know that this is still not sensitive to everybody. So not everybody shares like a positive experience, and that we recognize that there is some history that is not positive, that we don't want to perpetuate. The world that we want moving forward is one where racism isn't tolerated, equality and justice is a given, and we want to make sure that our brand continues to reflect the principles and the purpose that we want. So what we don't know yet is what it's going to be. What we do know is that we have been told that an announcement, a formal announcement will be made by sometime by the end of September, and that it will involve both a name and a visual identity change.
That's pretty fast, actually, to come up with all that. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it is shocking amount of work and speed that it's been moving through, but not without really careful consideration to what it means and what it should be. So part of actually a significant amount, as soon as we made the announcement, we launched this massive listening campaign because it was really important for us to understand as a company what this will, what it will mean, and to do it right, because it can only be done once, right? Like you get one chance to do this right. So in social media, we did understanding themes about what people are talking about. We did huge consumer surveys in the US and in the UK, and we interviewed and took polls from every single Mars associate across the globe. So well over 100,000 people were both, polled, as well as we had listening sessions, group listening sessions where people could just talk and share their feelings. So all of this sort of listening and trying to come to a place of really clear understanding is what is going to be feeding into where we're going to move forward to evolve the brand.
That's pretty amazing. So is it a given that the name will change, or is that not known yet?
Yeah, the name as well as the visual identity will change.
Is it a rebranding, or is it sort of a whole new brand and the old thing just sort of goes away?
No, I think it's important because when you hear the name, or if you walk down the grocery store aisle and you see the brand, you don't have to read that box to know Uncle Ben's, right? There is a clear, visual impact from the packaging that will remain. We don't want people to forget who we are, because we have a lot of brand equity and we feel really proud about what our product is and how quality has always been important. So that won't go away. We'll continue. It'll be the same product, and it will have a similar sort of visual appeal. So people will hopefully understand what it is when they see it on the shelf, or they hear the new name. There'll be some sort of a mental architecture that aligns them.
In this world that we live in today, which is complex on a lot of things, there's a lot of collectors, right? Can you have a vision of, are people just going to go nuts to find anything Uncle Ben's to hang on to?
Good luck right now, just trying to get product anyway. Yeah, maybe who knows? We've had such super high demand anyway on the resale side, because there's no way to know.
It is sort of interesting.
Are you going to get a storage unit for 25-pound bags of rice?
Yeah.
Bringing up storage units, I think in our storage unit, I probably still have some Uncle Ben's bags and some T-shirts somewhere.
Yeah. Every now and then you see, because they used to come in tins, right? Like cans, like the removable lid. So you still see those in vintage stores from time to time. And the brand identity has changed. The name has stayed the same since probably about 1946. But the image is changed. The image of Uncle Ben himself has evolved over a period of time. So he's much more professional looking now. He looks like he's the CEO, who's a stickler for quality. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I know the Uncle Ben's discussions was going on internally for probably quite some time leading up to this, but you have sort of other requests from the public for other brands or other companies to make changes too. You saw the stuff with Trader Joe's a couple weeks ago, and I think they actually pushed back. They went in the opposite direction, and they said, we like our brand names. We don't think that they're racist or anything, so we're going to stay with what we have. It is an interesting thought, just, how do you react to requests from the public, I guess, and what that means for food specifically. without making a value judgment on what's right or what's wrong, one thing we do know very clearly from the work we've done is that personal values is going to be more and more a decision factor in how people make their food choices. They want food and brands and restaurants and whatnot that represent who they are as people. And I do worry that we are in a more and more tribalized world where, there used to be a lot of things that we just fundamentally all agree on. Now we're tending to focus on things where we disagree. And what does that mean for the role of food and companies and brands? Can you take sort of a polarized position or not? There's been, actually, this is a good question for the chefs. I don't know if it's something that's surfaced in your operations yet, but think about the conversation around appropriation, for instance. That's a very hairy topic, potentially. If you carry it to its natural conclusion, you could claim essentially almost anything is appropriated in some way. But you also understand the other side of things where it says, like, yeah, maybe that doesn't seem so right. How do you respond to that type of a thing? And at what point does it get to a level where you say, okay, we need to think differently about the way that we operate?
For us, it's and it's going to sound like the coward's way out of this question, but for us, this whole thing has made us just circle the wagons.
Yeah.
And just back to what we are, because our like a lot of brands, because they're old and trusted. As long as we keep doing what we're doing the right thing, I think we're going to be a good spot. We're just trying not to. The one thing, there's been a few things that have come out of this that are good, if you can say good, but it's probably helped us all to streamline our thinking a little, probably understand what's important. I was saying the other day, you remember 6 months ago when the most important thing in the world was, did a sea turtle die from a plastic Starbucks straw?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't heard that conversation in a few months,
We want some plastic now to protect the plastic that we're the straw. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think I think for us, we just do, and I think the folks that, I think, like Mars haven't been talking about this for a long time anyhow. I think brands like that who are always thinking about doing the right thing are probably in a good spot. So we just try and stay as close to the core as we can and take care of our people. I think that's what's going to be for us probably most important. During this whole thing, we were trying to figure out, we have 135,000 people, mostly servers in the service industry across the country for our companies. It's a lot of people to not be able to work for a while. So, it was just, making sure you did the right thing. And that word gets out quickly. We, at Capital Grille for quite a few weeks, it was salaried leadership only, takeout only. And because people were the size of our check average, two, because we're so grateful we were doing something, there was a lot of gratuities floating around, people tipping and over tipping. And so basically we created a fund in every restaurant where we would fund until we got enough to call all the servers and said, hey, come on in, and give them $100 gift cards. And when they came in, we would package products, give them bags of sugar or stuff we had that we could buy through the vendors, and just try and, keep it going. And that word gets out pretty quickly. Like, hey, I heard your, a regular guest come back and say, hey, I heard if I tip you, it's going to go to my favorite server at some point. So, hey, we're going to tip you. So, that's, for us, that's probably about as complicated as it gets.
Yeah, I would agree. I think as long as you continue to stay with those core values. We've been around since 1949. We're a conservative company, that's for sure. Not looking to rock the boat, but as Michael said, we're taking care of our people, we're taking care of our community, and that's where we are.
Yeah. So actually, a question for you, John. So much of the legacy of the way you serve is about the person in their car. And what we've sort of seen with COVID is that the car has become sort of a natural extension of the person themselves. It's sort of like your own personal protective bubble that you move around in. It's no longer just a mode of transportation. Are you seeing anything different in the way people are eating or where they're eating it? I got to believe more people are eating in their car now than before. You see parking lot parties at places now too, where people just park their car and they all eat and do like a mini tailgate or something, and they have their fast food there. Are you seeing any of that?
Yeah, I haven't heard of any of that happening in our restaurants. And actually, we talked about it. We said, who who better to bring back car hop service than us? We did it for years. We did it into the 70s. But then, then the safety people reminded us that there's a reason we got out of car hop service, and there's we really want to be involved in, and some liabilities there. So haven't seen a lot of that. But when we went from takeout only to 50% dining room, and people were excited and they want to come in, and then we're back to 25, but you can still feed people outside as long as the group doesn't get bigger than 25 folks. We've done a lot to try to adapt to those things. We have picnic tables at restaurants that never had picnic tables before. The facilities people went out and installed a bunch of picnic tables at any location that is big enough to have a grassy yard where we can spread those tables 6 feet apart. That's where they're at.
Are a lot of people using that option, or are they still mostly taking food with them?
Surprisingly, yes, they are. We had some really hot days a couple weeks ago here, more Florida-like weather than we're used to in Pittsburgh. And, it gets into the mid-90s here, and it's pretty hot. We're not used to that. And I'm out visiting a restaurant, and I was shocked that every picnic table we had at that restaurant was full. I said, I don't even want to get out of the car. And you folks are sitting out here like, it's crazy. And we've said that a lot of this has been, in Pittsburgh, so you get snow and people get cabin fever. So they're trapped in the house for a little bit, and then the weekend comes and they can't wait to get out. This is like the worst case of cabin fever ever, because, when they get that little opportunity to come out, I've heard from managers where people were sitting at those picnic tables and we started to get rain. And they said, hey, folks, we'll try to make a place for you to come inside. They didn't care. They're sitting out there eating their dinner in the rain, and they just laughed and had a good time. They were just so happy to be out and not eating out of styrofoam that they really didn't bother them at all. So they're really looking forward to being able to embrace that and get back out and do that again. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. John, if I could ask both you and Michael, what's happened to your split of, let's say, weekday versus weekend traffic? How has that changed during the pandemic?
So for us, I'll back to your previous question about car hops. So a couple of interesting things that for us, one, imagine $100 check average place like Capital Grille. Imagine if 6 months ago I went to my boss and said, hey, we're going to throw some folding tables on 42nd Street, drop some tablecloths over them, and we're going to serve 60 people a night dinner there for $100 a head. Are you cool with that? I probably wouldn't be on the webinar right now. And, but now it's like, how many damn tables can we fit on that street, right? So it's interesting. Well, you mentioned car hops. So Cheddar's, Cheddar's is, our clearly our value-based player. And they're really super, super loyal guests because of that. And there's a bunch of stories about, in the beginning when it was really low capacity and takeouts weren't super busy yet, of people coming and sitting on each side of the parking lot and having these tailgates like regular guests and just ordering. There's a story about a manager who had a friend who was a local bar entertainer, just played guitar, and since he clearly had nothing to do, he came out and he stood in a tent where they were collecting the funds, and he played guitar and people sat around. Our restaurants at Capital Grille had a couple of parking lot parties for servers who would come and pick up food and just want to see each other from a distance. So it is interesting. The split for us, back to your question you just asked, the split for us is because we have lost basically all of our business, all of our business money, travel money or corporate money. Now it's pushing super heavy weekend. So now it is, you will get by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you pick up a Friday and Saturday, you gotta be ready. So you are definitely making hay when the sun shines. It's much different. Again, we lost all of that, for us, 15, 18, 20% of your business can come from, corporate guys off spending money. And so when that's not around, and there's no even business travel's not around, it really slows down that weekday stuff.
How do you deal with crushes where you can only do 25 or 50% capacity, but you have all these people that want to come in the restaurant? How are you dealing with the wait and lines?
Yeah, I mean, it's, luckily people are gotten so used to, to coming and making reservations. And we are, we pride ourselves on being a relationship brand and trying to make sure that we have close ties. So like our loyal guests, our managers and our sales managers are on the phone with our loyal guests saying, hey, if you want to come in, like Saturday at 6 is terrible, you want to come in Friday, or if you want Saturday at 6, tell me now. But I would say this, so the challenge is, right away from the beginning, we were as a company like, listen, these are the rules, and we all know that you could slide a table in and do another 20 people and break the rules. You're not going to do that. We're going to follow these rules. We're going to keep everybody safe. This is the deal, and do whatever you can. So, it has been, for sure, podiums and our hostesses is a little more stress, right? You know, Saturday night people are getting out there. We also see that people kind of, you know, a lot of restaurants say people kind of like coming up, checking in and going back and hanging out in their car and saying, hey, I'm going to be back in 10 minutes. I'll go turn their air conditioning on and sit there and wait so they don't have to be around a lot of people. But it's, you know, it's in the areas where we can use the bars to feed people. That's been the biggest shift. So where the bar used to be social for us, it's not anymore. The bar is now 6 new dining, 6, how many tables you can fit in there legally. That's what it is. And there's no more people sitting around, you know, drinking Stoli Dolies all night. It's people, you know, sitting there and eating where that's possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when I think of let's say steak as an example, I think that's probably something I need to eat there, right? It's I don't probably feel as great about taking to go or having it delivered for that matter. And we did as part of our brand fingerprints tracker, we did a special COVID wave to understand what people think of different brands. And Capital Grille, for instance, ranks really high in the top 10% of its patrons saying, I'm really craving food from this particular restaurant right now. But when it comes to whether I think this food is a fit for, let's say, delivery or takeout, it's much, much lower. And I think that's just sort of common sense. Are you modifying or have you modified the menu for things that, let's say, are thought to travel better? You're doing, you know, more pastas or anything like that, or?
Yeah, so we haven't really modified that. We just put a lot more, you know, one of the interesting shifts is, I think for a lot of table service restaurants, and certainly a lot in our check average range, you know, takeout used to be that ticket that came up at 7 o'clock on a Saturday, and you're like, who the hell took a takeout order on Saturday night? And you're yelling at the host, like, who took that call? Hang up on them, right? Now you're like, hey, get the other line. Somebody wants to order, right? So we really haven't adjusted as much. What we did do, though, is we do have now, as long as we can, we do permanently have the, you know, we're selling steaks in boxes, you know, butcher boxes of steaks, and guests are liking that because our guests are, you know, they're savvy enough to take, you know, buy some expensive ribeyes and take home and cook them and do that kind of stuff. So that business has become you know, it's like a real business for us, for sure. I mean, we're selling steaks all the time. We're selling some boxes. We sold, you know, for each of the major, you know, Mother's Day, Easter, Father's Day, for each of those holidays, we did bundles, you know, 6-person bundles of either you could pick it up the day before, ready to go, ready to heat, or you could pick it up the day of hot. And that was hugely successful for us. I mean, it was a big deal. And Easter, because that was kind of sort of the first right at the beginning. You know, I think, you know, we're not obviously Olive Garden, but we sold 10,000 bundles, which for us is a lot. You know, it's 200 a restaurant, so it's a bunch. So
that feels like it's a real business going forward too, right? Like a line of Capital Grille branded steaks, for instance, seems like that has. Yeah,
that's actually, before I ran in here 5 minutes late. That's where we were talking about, like, what does that look like moving forward? How do we? I mean, we have a lot of strength in our buying and the way we can age and stuff. So it's you know, it's just right now it's easy because it all feels incremental. It's just at some point you got to figure out, you know, it'd be nice to be at 100% capacity and have to worry about whether that was cannibalizing your business, but I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that for a little while.
Chef, are people ordering those online?
Yeah. So you can go online and order for sure. So we were just doing single steaks, and we went to a more formal, you know, with box and paper, and we have some tins of seasoning. So if you order steaks, you get the seasoning, you get steak sauce with it. It's a slightly, I won't say discounted because of our price points, but they're less than 15 to 20% less than steaks on the menu if you order hot to go. So, you know, people pick up on that. We did, in the very beginning, we did some of those, you know, flash sales, and they were, you know, it was a little bit crazy. Like I mentioned, right? Sell 12,000 steaks in a week is that's a lot of saws going across the country and trying to cut ribeyes. Believe me.
Yeah, if you're dealing with an expensive cut of steak at home, I'm not a good cook, so I worry that I would mess it up. So I would like an AI version of you, Michael, that could see what I'm doing and yell at me when I'm screwing things up.
You know, I saw Michael Simon on Father's Day do live, like I think it was Instagram live, but he did live from his backyard and cook, because he sold sold burgers in boxes, and then he did like a burger cooking and topping thing, but he did it live. I'm too busy on Father's Day. I'm not doing it live. I'll have to send you a recording. I'll send you the AI version.
Hey, Jack, I know you've got a couple of slides. You want to do that now? I think it'd be a good time.
Sure, happy to. Let's see, there's a lot we could talk about. Why don't I just do a couple and we'll see where this goes. So let me share my screen out. So we're shifting gears a little bit, but we spent a lot of time at Datassential thinking about how COVID, let's say, impacts food trends going forward. And the short of it is the things that people are interested in coming into COVID and maybe have not been able to have as much of, all those trends are going to continue. If you look at the number of trends that exist in food today, right, the number of flavors and ingredients and whatnot that are growing quickly on menus, there are more now than ever. They've been paused temporarily in large part because we haven't had access to some of those items, and a lot of the restaurants that have opened back up have done so with limited menus. But we think they are going to continue, and we're in the process of that happening right now. But there are, let's say, categories of food and trends that we think are going to be actually expedited or accelerated because of COVID, that not only will they continue, but they're going to grow faster than ever before. And I think one big sort of thematic area that we think fits the bill here is this notion of alternative foods. Basically, these are ways of doing foods or ingredients. You take something that's been really common and very familiar for a long time and sort of reinventing it, right? So it's not peanut butter, now it's almond butter. It's not milk that cheese that comes from a cow. It's cheese that came from a cashew. It's coffee that came from a mushroom. It's not milk from a cow, it's milk from an almond, and so on and so on and so on. So classic foods and ingredients reinvented in really sort of surprising ways, where in a way it's not even that surprising anymore, because now you're like, okay, the next weird thing that you see that reinvents an existing famous, comfortable, convenient category, probably won't even be that surprised because there's so many of these now. We think these collectively and individually, and the list goes much longer than this, are among the types of things that are not only going to persist beyond COVID, but are actually accelerated as a result of COVID, right? So you think about it, there is sort of a mindset that the pandemic has brought to us. I think we used to have a conceptualization of what's possible in life and in the world, and if something seemed a little out of bounds, we had something internally that would say, oh, that feels a little bit out of bounds. I think all of that is essentially out the window right now, because everything that we've experienced for the last 5 months, the vast majority of it has been out of bounds by any traditional standard, right? Who would have thought that you walk around and everywhere you look, people are wearing masks, you can't get a hug anymore, people are afraid to get too close. I mean, all this stuff seems so unbelievably bizarre. I think it's good for all of us to, once a day or once a week or whatever period you feel comfortable with, just sit and reflect on how strange this moment actually is. We've been sort of lulled into feeling like this is just the way life is right now, but it really is quite odd. And if you haven't had the chance to take like a video journal and just sort of talk to yourself and show this to your future self about what you were doing and thinking during this time, you really should. It's a moment worth preserving. Hopefully the moment doesn't last too much longer, but to the extent that it's here, let's preserve some of it. So I think maybe before it's like, yeah, I don't know about this, whether the notion that you can get peanut butter out of an almond instead sounds crazy to me. But everything's sort of crazy right now. We started off this conversation with basketball games being played without an audience. Now it's just sort of normal. So we've moved through that anything's possible phase, and we've also gotten people to rethink what food actually is and what it can do for them. And we know that one of the things that people want more from their food now than before are benefits from the food itself. Immunity is the number one thing right now that's really sort of crept up. And there's a bunch of other functional properties. A lot of these sort of alternative foods, right, the almond butters and the cashew milks and whatnot, they're often rooted in having some sort of a functional benefit to the consumer. So we think collectively as a group, these types of things will become more and more popular. And you can see that they've all been growing, right? It's, hey, almond milk growing on menus, quinoa, which no one really knew of or could really even pronounce prior to 2010, really has been growing consistently. The notion that, it's almond butter, that's grown, and the list just sort of goes on and on and on and on. So look for ways to bring in these sort of more, revolutionized ingredients is maybe a way of thinking about it, into what you offer. There was a time when a lot of consumers would say, "Ooh, that's sort of weird. I don't know about that." I think we are beyond that. Now, the one caveat I would give is that we are still largely in a state where many people are having comfort foods right now and sticking with familiar favorites because it is comforting in times of uncertainty. I think we have already started the transition where people are starting to move away from comfort foods and are looking for something new again. The mac and cheese only goes so far, so to speak. And we see this in the research we do with consumers. 79% of consumers say, I'm now sort of looking for something new in my food, relative to the impact that COVID has had. I think it's something like 59% say they've become bored with the stuff that they've been eating during this pandemic. So we are starting to look for new things. This is a good area to do that. I have a couple of slides on plant-based eating. I don't know if we want to cover that. We can save that for a future session, Kevin. You're probably watching the clock a little bit more closely.
Jack, if you would, and then let's go to some questions on that, because we had some really good content about plant-based.
Yeah, so I'll do this real quickly. So this is how people, this is the approach that consumers have with the way they eat. So this is today, the way people are eating. About 69% of people are unabashed meat eaters, and you can see that the vegetarian and vegan population is significant, but still relatively small, about 8% collectively. Flexitarians are the larger group of the bunch. The question is, how do you want to eat? What is your aspiration? If you could change your diet and do the things that you want to do tomorrow, what would it look like? And that looks more like this green line here, where you have a shrinkage of full unabashed meat eaters, and you have a pretty significant acceleration in the flexitarian population. You have growth too among vegetarians and vegans in terms of what people want to be doing, but it's really that flexitarian group that is the largest and also the one that has the biggest sort of gap between what people are doing today and what they want to be doing tomorrow, right? So that's the thing to sort of keep your eye out for. And people want to increase their intake of plant-based foods. 58% of consumers say, I want to increase plant-based foods. Not a whole lot of people say they want to decrease it. So the underlying desire to have more plant-based options in our diet is clearly there, but there is a difference between people, what people say they want and what they actually end up going to do. There's a reason that, on January 1st, everyone's New Year's resolution is to go to the gym, eat healthier, lose weight, and by the time January 15th comes around, that thing is just totally blown out of the water. So the key is, if we think that it's a good idea to introduce more plant-based solutions into the diet, we have to help people overcome the gap between what they want to do and what they actually do. So one of them is that, some people say, yeah, some plant-based options maybe don't really fit the mood that I'll be in. Like sometimes I just feel like having, a whole lot of animal protein, but that's not that big of a number, right? 16% say that's a barrier for me. You have a number of folks, 28%, that say, I don't think I would get enough protein out of plant-based eating. And you actually see this pretty clearly, that animal protein, animals are thought to be a better and more efficient source of protein by consumers compared to plants. And there's a pretty big gap over there. So that's something that would have to be done in sort of education or messaging or the food itself to overcome that. But there are actually three things that are even more of a concern to consumers than this notion that, plants can't give me an adequate quantity of protein. And you might start thinking, well, what are those three things? You may actually be able to guess some of these, but we'll go through the list real quickly anyway. So number 3 is that I'm worried that I'm paying too much for plant-based food at a restaurant or something. Like I have in my mind this thought that, meat or steak or something, that really carries value. So I would be hard pressed to pay a similar amount for something that didn't have meat in it. So we're going to have to sort of overcome that, which is sort of odd because, I think sometimes produce, by the pound can cost as much or more than some of the animal products can, but consumers don't necessarily equate that a really good lettuce costs as much as chicken does. So something has to happen there with that perception of value. Some people say, if I do this, I'm just going to be hungry a couple of hours later. It's not going to really hold me over very well. Perhaps that's legitimate in some cases. Perhaps it's not a legitimate concern in others, but there's something we can do with that too. And the number one thing is I'm just not sure if it's going to taste very good. But I think if you take those top 3 things, might not taste good, I might end up being just hungry a couple hours later, and I don't want to pay too much for something that's just plants. That actually tells you what the strategy is to make plant-based eating more popular and to overcome the, hey, here's what I want to do versus here's what I'm going to do gap, right? So each one of those 3 things is instructive because it tells us what sort of the answer would be, right? Might not taste good. Well, we shouldn't, when we're talking about plant-based, we should actually be leading with flavor. So much of the conversation with healthy eating in the past has been talking about the healthy part of it first, and then flavor becomes sort of an afterthought. If not in the product, then certainly in the marketing. Here, the strategy is different. Lead with flavor, and the plant-based thing just happens to be a side benefit of that. I might be hungry in a couple of hours. Well, then we should build more satisfying dishes. And if you're worried about paying too much for plant-based ingredients, that's only because you're starting from a mindset of what's missing, that there's no meat there. But if you instead spotlight what's there versus focusing on what's not there, you reverse that equation. So flavor first, satisfying dishes that spotlight what's there instead of what's not. That is the roadmap to making plant-based eating not just more popular in terms of what people want to do, but that they would actually go about and do that. And I also think that there is this notion of what does it mean to be eating plants so much. I mean, people do understand the term plant-based. When we've surveyed consumers, a lot of them are familiar with the term, and they generally think of it as something that's fairly popular. But if we get fully behind just this notion of promoting the term plant-based eating, I do think you are going to conjure up this image in some people's minds where it's like, oh, yeah, eating plants, that doesn't really sound all that appealing to me. I'm like a rabbit all of a sudden. And I think the way to overcome that, again, is to just focus on that thing that we just talked about. Focus on the flavor, focus on how you're going to offer satiety in that dish, and focus on not just that it's made of plants, but the actual stuff itself that might be interesting and delicious sounding. I know it seems very basic and sort of obvious, but I really think that's the solution. We just do those 3 things. So with that, I will open it up.
Yeah, and so with that, with all due respect to the king of carnivore and meat eating from the Capital Grille, Michael, I think it might be appropriate, for us to go to Janet and have her talk a little bit about, your vision, because you had a great story about your vision. By the way,
did you get to see my shirt? Vegetables, and let me just say for Chef Michael, 1 in 3 millennials now identifies themselves as meat-free. So, if, I wanted to go and have a special fine dining birthday experience, but I wanted to bring my family along with me, there's a good chance that my vegetarian daughter might push back, on going to a steakhouse if that steakhouse didn't offer some really good plant-based alternatives, right? So I think that even in that sort of environment where you're really celebrating really high quality meats, like in Michael's case, there's still a place on the menu for really high quality, flavor forward plant-based foods. And it's not hard to do. There's so much, if you think about the variety of foods that are available that are not formerly an animal, like just the plant kingdom, there's so much more diversity in the animal or the plant kingdom than in the animal kingdom. So, developing the same flavors and treating it, giving it the same care and thought, like that you would give to a traditional animal-based meal, the flavor and this satisfaction level is going to be there too. So of course, I'm a big proponent of driving that through grains, of course, because number one, they have that health halo, they fit perfectly, they complement things like legumes to create that complete protein that you're maybe lacking if you have just one vegetable protein, but they also really contribute heavily to satiety. So you feel full when you've had grains. So whether that's a grain bowl, a quinoa bowl, an ancient grains, something, a salad that's got grains incorporated into it, like a whole new types of dish, or you've made your house-made veggie burger. So in John's case, so you're going to offer maybe a really high quality veggie burger that's got ancient grades incorporated. You could even use vegetable waste like the carrot ends and the mushroom stems. Chop that up and it makes a great veggie burger that will satisfy lots of folks.
Yeah, thank you for that, Janet. We appreciate it. We're running out of time. We're actually out of time now. But one of the things we said we would discuss, so not to go into the other, stay on this, but I'd like to. But the supplier-operator relationship, why don't we just, if you guys can give us one, quick wrap up here of this session about, what you see that's happening right now and how things are changing for the near future and maybe even for the future. Michael, why don't we start with you? You had some great lines that you had talked about in this area.
Yeah, so I think what happens, for all our supplier partners, there's a few things to keep in mind. One, clearly everyone is trying to do more with less, and everyone is trying to streamline, circle the wagons, get back to the core. If your menu was 12 items, can you do it with 8? Those type of things. There's not going to be a ton, in most cases, of innovation right now. So we all have to get comfortable with that. Having said that, I believe, just my personal belief, I believe that there will become a day when, there's going to be a headline that someone's going to take credit for this being over, and they're going to say, go back to business as usual. When that happens, I think the floodgates are going to open. I don't think it's going to be a middle distance or a marathon. I think it's going to be a sprint to get new products on it. So I think we're going to have to be in a position where we're not really normally comfortable of building some things to keep in a pipeline that we can roll out next spring, next summer. Olive Garden and Longhorn are big for us. When your brands, start with a B, when they're $1 billion, you have to be top of mind to keep that kind of business around. So you can't just, right now, buy one, take one for Olive Garden is a fantastic strategy, but they're down in that kitchen working on, what do I do next spring? What's next? So I think that's the thing. And I would say that, continuing just regular conversations, just sort of trust-based conversations with chefs and suppliers back and forth so that you know who you're going to go to in the end is important. I would say all of us are having fatigue over the food chain being broken, the supply chain being broken. I think we talked yesterday, we're all spending much more time chasing things down because we've all tried to diversify our vendors into small people, and unfortunately some of these small companies go away, products go away. So, I think it's going to be about, you're going to, at the end of the day, at the end of this, you're going to work with the people you trust, can deliver for you. And I think on the supplier side, I said yesterday, one thing I think supplier side, I think you're all going to have to get comfortable with for a long time is, the ability to come in the kitchen with the cooler set up, do the thing, let's go to dinner at the end of the night and then talk about products. That's not going to be around for a long time. So we got to figure out how to, from a solution-based perspective, have conversations, trust each other, say, hey, I know, I'm not going to show you 12 things. I'm going to show you these 2 things that I know, right? And we got to go from there.
Awesome. Janet, you want to give us a final thought, and then we'll go to John to wrap it up.
Yeah, so I guess my first thing would be to say, to echo what Michael was just saying about the trust relationships. Also, I would say lean on your, brands, your bigger suppliers to provide you with the solutions that you need, right? We have deep digital commerce data. We have people that is they are experts in this area. So if you need, as people move more to app-based ordering, how do you drive add-ons? How do you understand your consumer's decision tree in that digital environment? Lean on your suppliers to help you with that sort of data. And then my other thing that I would just emphasize with you is we as suppliers don't want to make more work for you. So if we're having to do a virtual sort of innovation session, which I'm sure lots of suppliers are happy to do, be really clear about what success looks like so that we are making your life easier, because that's what we're here for, right? We want a mutual solution for everybody and want to really build that relationship. That's why we're the big branded players. We have those resources and, ask us for it.
Awesome. John? John, can you hear? Uh-oh.
I think he froze.
I think he did. There he is. He's back. He's trying.
He's still in shock from all that plant-based stuff we were talking about.
Can't believe it.
The best way to sell plant-based is to garnish with bacon or a nice slice of beef. It'll sell. Trust me.
Carrot bacon, like Archie.
There you go. Okay, I'll give you that.
All day.
I'm back now. Come on, okay.
Am I back? All right, good.
We can hear you.
I think the best thing in tying both those conversations together is the fact that we have to have those communications about what it is we need from the suppliers and what they can do to help support us, and knowing that we're not going to have those same relationships like we used to, where they come in with a cooler and set things up, as Michael said. But also, is we spend so much time trying to deal with the supply chain issues. We all are, and we understand that there's going to be supply chain issues that our vendors can't even, deal with because they've got shortages of things that they need to build. We're all shortening our menus. I understand they're shortening their SKUs, but we just need to have a lot more conversations early as possible about what some of these shortages will be and what some of these things are going to affect us, because it's hard for us to tell a guest that, hey, their favorite thing's not available anymore because I can't get it. So looking at what those replacements could be and sort of building that stable more for the future too, when these things can happen.
Awesome, thanks. And sorry we went over a little bit here for everybody that's on, but I want to thank everybody for being on here, both members and sponsors. Thanks again to John and Janet and Michael and Jack for an amazing. The chat on here was really cool, and people had a lot of great comments about this. But love it when there's so much information. We left a lot, still on the cutting room floor, if you will, of things we wanted to talk about today. But that's why we'll have another one of these in 2 weeks. And thanks to everyone for your support and help, and anything we can do from the headquarters office, just let us know. We are still working on our events for the end of the year. So if there's still interest from people to go to either Louisville, you saw in the newsletter, Louisville, Portland, and or our Santa Fe events, let us know how you feel about that, because we really need to make a decision, especially on Louisville, which is an immersion. It's a smaller event, just 20 people, but we really need to make a decision on that soon if we're going forward. The city and the chefs that we're dealing with and the Bourbon Trail people, they're all available for us to do it. But we just need to know, does it make sense for us now, or does it make more sense for us to move it a few months to a time when it's better for everyone? So thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your afternoon and week, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.